This little girl is only 6 years old, but she's been blessed with the ability to curse others. However, the price she pays is constant fatigue and weakness. Her wicked mother, knowing of her power, the mother exploited it by posing as a sorceress to make money. One day, a woman came and requested a curse to make her husband bedridden so he wouldn't be with another woman. The mother initially refused, but when the woman produced a thick wad of money, she changed her mind. She went inside, where the frail Sojin lay, and said, "This will be the last time I use your power." Immediately afterward, dark red veins began to appear on Sojin's small arm. After the ritual was completed, the mother came out and announced that the curse had been finished. The client, though somewhat suspicious, silently left. As soon as the woman left the house, she received news from the hospital that her husband had suffered a stroke and was being treated. Only then did the woman fully believe in Sojin's mother's power. She then hurriedly got into her car to visit her husband. At this point, only the mother remained in the house. She sat sadly in the yard drinking alcohol. She felt immense guilt for exploiting her daughter's abilities to make money, an action that had caused Sojin to weaken. Suddenly, a car's headlights shone directly into her eyes. A woman wearing a red scarf appeared. She offered a perfunctory greeting and then signaled her henchmen to attack Sojin's mother. It turned out that this woman was Jin Kyung. She was also a sorceress who used curses to kill others. However, Jin Kyung was not alone. She worked under Chairman Jong Hyun. After sorceress Jin Kyung ordered her subordinates to take away Sojin's mother's body, she instructed them to douse the house with gasoline and set it on fire. Chairman Jong Hyun watched from afar, and upon witnessing this horrific scene, he smiled with satisfaction. Sojin was terrified. She ran straight into the mountains to escape. Her mother was gone, and her house was burned down. Now, Sojin harbored a deep-seated hatred for Jong Hyun and sorceress Jin Kyung. 10 years later, the young Sojin had grown into an adult. She still carried a heavy burden of hatred for Chairman Jong Hyun. However, Sojin realized that she couldn't fight against Jong Hyun's power alone, so she decided to seek allies. On another front, reporter Jin Hee was also investigating the Forest Group. Jin Hee found a crucial witness named Jung In, a former employee of Forest. When Jin Hee mentioned Chairman Jong Hyun, Jung In still appeared very frightened because he had been assaulted by Jong Hyun's men. Jung In recounted how he was brutally beaten by Jong Hyun's henchmen, while Chairman Jong Hyun coldly observed from afar. Jung In claimed he recognized Jong Hyun because the chairman exuded a very distinctive scent. The reason Jung In was beaten was simple. He had been fired and then spoke out against the company's wrongdoings. Jung In revealed to reporter Jin Hee a strange thing about Forest. The group owned a very mysterious subsidiary. The employees were aware of its existence, but they didn't know the purpose of the subsidiary. Money from the parent company kept flowing into it, indicating that the subsidiary was operating very shadily. A while later, reporter Jin Hee returned to the newsroom. She presented the information she had gathered to her superiors, seeking their opinion on exposing the truth about the Forest Group. However, the editor-in-chief, Ju Hwan, stopped halfway through the article. He even forbade Jin Hee from writing. Ju Hwan argued that Jin Hee had only heard one side of the story and lacked clear evidence. He emphasized that journalists must write based on facts. Feeling wronged by this, Jin Hee left the office. She was determined to find the evidence herself. Reporter Jin Hee then went to see her husband, Sung Jun. Sung Jun was currently the head of the police team and was also investigating the secrets of Forest Company. Seeing Jin Hee putting so much pressure on herself because of this, Sung Jun promised to help her investigate and find the information she needed. Hearing her husband's comforting words, Jin Hee felt somewhat reassured and went home. That evening, reporter Jin Hee searched online for information about Forest Company and tagged it in her post. The post asked anyone who knew anything about the company to contact her. Unexpectedly, just a few minutes after Jin Hee posted, her post received many comments criticizing Forest. Someone even arranged to meet Jin Hee to discuss the matter. Jin Hee noted down the address and quickly went to the meeting place. Unexpectedly, the person who wanted to meet Jin Hee was the female student. When Jin Hee saw the red veins on Sojin's hands, she felt something strange. But what surprised Jin Hee even more was Sojin's claim that she knew a lot about Chairman Jong Hyun. Jin Hee wondered what Sojin was trying to say. Sojin directly asserted that Chairman Jong Hyun was an evil spirit. However, Jin Hee thought that it was the 21st century, and ghosts couldn't fool her. Jin Hee thought Sojin was just teasing her, so she decided to stand up and leave. To gain Jin Hee's trust, Sojin offered to curse someone. All she needed was a picture of the person, name in Chinese characters, and a personal item. Unexpectedly, Jin Hee angrily left. However, Sojin's words still left Jin Hee feeling somewhat haunted. That night, Jin Hee actually dreamt that Chairman Jong Hyun transformed into an evil entity. She woke up with a start, just as dawn broke. As usual, reporter Jin Hee went online to check the news and read an article revealing Jung In's identity. Jung In was the same employee who had provided information to Jin Hee the day before. The article stated that Jung In was a mole for a foreign company, which was why he had been fired by Forest. Afterward, Jin Hee received a call from Jung In. Jung In questioned Jin Hee, asking why she had broken her promise not to reveal the witness's identity. Jin Hee explained that she hadn't done it, but Jung In couldn't believe her. Jung In was rushing to escape the city. He wanted to tell reporter Jin Hee one last secret about Forest, but before he could finish his sentence, his mouth suddenly froze. Jung In's body was no longer under the control of reason, and the car stopped in the middle of the road. The next second, Jung In's hand instinctively shifted into reverse. Despite Jung In's attempts to stop it, he couldn't. The car rolled straight down into the abyss, and Jung In died as a result. Reporter Jin Hee rushed to the newsroom and immediately confronted director Ju Hwan. It turned out that the previous night, Ju Hwan had met with Chairman Jong Hyun's secretary. The secretary had given Ju Hwan money and wanted him to reveal witness information. Because of the money, Ju Hwan wouldn't hesitate to do anything. After Ju Hwan revealed Jung In's name, the secretary gave him a USB drive containing fabricated information about Jung In, selling internal information to a foreign company. The secretary wanted Ju Hwan to write an article exposing this false truth, hence the article this morning. At this point, reporter Jin Hee directly called Ju Hwan a despicable person because the editorial office had previously agreed not to reveal the witness's identity, which could lead to retaliation from Forest Company. But Ju Hwan still accepted the bribe. Ju Hwan's actions indirectly caused Jung In's death. Ju Hwan angrily grabbed Jin Hee by the collar, saying he wouldn't stop there. He even wanted to write an article claiming that Jung In had taken his own life out of fear of punishment. This enraged Jin Hee even more, but Ju Hwan roughly threw her aside. Jin Hee accidentally saw Ju Hwan's pen cap on the table, engraved with Ju Hwan's name in Chinese characters. Remembering So Jin's offer to curse someone, Jin Hee secretly stole the pen cap. Afterward, Jin Hee arranged to meet So Jin. The reporter Jin Hee took out pen cap engraved with Ju Hwan's name and picture and gave it to So Jin. So Jin then began casting a curse on Ju Hwan. The girl's hands began to show thick red veins. After a while, the curse was complete. Reporter Jin Hee was still half believing, half doubting. So Jin only left her name and then left, knowing that reporter Jin Hee would definitely contact her again. Meanwhile, director Ju Hwan was preparing to go home when he heard strange noises in the office. But when he looked around, he saw no one there. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered, and it frightened Ju Hwan. The next second, his body suddenly twisted as if something was breaking his bones. Finally, Ju Hwan coughed up blood and died on the spot. The police, upon hearing the news, immediately arrived at the scene. When they witnessed Ju Hwan's bizarre death posture, everyone was terrified. There were security cameras in the newsroom. After everyone saw the video recording of Ju Hwan breaking his own limbs, they became even more confused. Through investigation, the police obtained information that Ju Hwan had a conflict with reporter Jin Hee before his death, making Jin Hee a suspect. Reporter Jin Hee was summoned to the station for questioning. To ensure transparency, Chief Sung Joon did not question his wife himself, but instead had his subordinates do it. Reporter Jin Hee honestly recounted what she knew, but she concealed the fact that she had asked So Jin to curse Ju Hwan. Because the police could not obtain any crucial clues, they released Jin Hee. At this point, reporter Jin Hee asked police officer John how Ju Hwan had actually died. Although internal regulations prohibited revealing information, out of respect for the chief's wife, Officer Jang recounted the details to Jin Hee. Only then did Jin Hee realize with shock that the curse So Jin spoke of was completely true. Reporter Jin Hee asked Officer Jang to let her know if any further clues were found. Then she excused herself to go home and rest. Meanwhile, Chairman Jong Hyun's informant, planted within the police force, called to report on the investigation's progress to his secretary. Hearing about Ju Hwan's strange death, the secretary asked the informant to send him photos of the crime scene. After obtaining the photos, the secretary rushed to inform Chairman Jong Hyun. After seeing the photos, Chairman Jong Hyun was somewhat surprised. Understanding that the cause of death was a curse, he immediately ordered his secretary to summon the sorceress Jin Kyung, who was abroad, back. Just then, sorceress Jin Kyung landed at the airport. She received an urgent call from Chairman Jong Hyun. Knowing something important had happened, she promised to return to headquarters soon. At this point, the police went to the forensic doctor to get the autopsy results. Ju Hwan's joints were shattered, leading to suffocation, and he subsequently died from a ruptured artery. However, this could be deduced simply by reviewing the crime scene footage. The only suspicious point was the presence of a large amount of arachidonic acid and ethanolamine in Ju Hwan's brain, components of stimulants. The police suspected Ju Hwan had overdosed on drugs and then self-harmed. However, the forensic doctor argued that this was a special case where the body reached its limit of pain tolerance, causing the brain to produce these two substances for temporary pain relief rather than the victim using stimulants. The doctor confirmed that there were no signs of contact with banned substances in Ju Hwan's nose and mouth and no needle marks on his body. This information further confused the police. Perhaps they needed to investigate further before reaching a definitive conclusion. Just after leaving the forensic lab, Chief Sung Joon received a report from the call history investigation team. The police discovered that Ju Hwan frequently contacted Chairman Jong Hyun's secretary, and Ju Hwan's last call was also with this secretary. Sung Joon didn't expect this to be connected to Forest Company, so he decided to treat it as a serious criminal case. That evening, reporter Jin Hee went online to investigate the truth about the curse So Jin had mentioned. Jin Hee was surprised to find out it actually existed. Knowing So Jin wasn't lying, Jin Hee decided to go find her. Remembering the uniform So Jin had worn, she searched online for information about the school So Jin attended. Then, Jin Hee drove there herself. While waiting at the school gate, she unexpectedly received a call from her husband. Sung Joon returned home and found his wife missing, causing him great anxiety. Jin Hee reassured him, telling him to wait for her at home, then hung up. Sung Joon found his wife's behavior somewhat puzzling, but he didn't think too much about it. He decided to go to bed. Coincidentally, Sung Joon found a pen cap engraved with director Ju Hwan's name on his wife's bed. He began to suspect his wife was hiding something from him. Meanwhile, reporter Jin Hee, who was following So Jin, suddenly saw So Jin being dragged into an alley. It turned out to be a group of unruly students. They wanted So Jin to apologize to the female student she had cursed. One male student slapped So-jin in the face as a warning. He even threatened to slash her mouth with a knife if she continued to curse others. At that moment, reporter Jin-hee appeared. She threatened the students that she would call the police, but instead of being afraid, they tried to teach Jin-hee a lesson. So Jin couldn't hold back any longer. Touching she was acceptable, but touching an innocent person was unacceptable. So Jin grabbed the male student's hand, an action that confused him. Next, red veins appeared on her hand. She looked directly into his eyes and performed the curse. Immediately, blood gushed from his nose. The male student was terrified, and his friends pulled him away. The female student who was with him felt So Jin was terrifying, so she quickly followed the group of male friends. Witnessing everything that had just happened, reporter Jin-hee became even more certain of So Jin's curse abilities. Meanwhile, on the other side, sorceress Jin Kyung had returned to see Chairman Jong Hyun. Upon seeing the photos of Ju Hwan's corpse, she realized that the person who performed the curse possessed extremely powerful abilities. Or, to be more precise, the evil spirit possessing that person was extraordinary. The sorceress Jin Kyung suspected that the evil spirit did not originate in South Korea, but came from distant Japan during the World War II era. To determine who was possessing this foreign spirit, Jin Kyung decided to perform a ritual to summon Ju Hwan's soul. Afterward, the secretary helped Jin Kyung arrange for Ju Hwan's funeral. He gave Ju Hwan's family some money to buy them some time for the sorceress to perform the ritual. Once everything was prepared, Jin Kyung began the summoning. She realized the cursor's method involved using personal items bearing the cursed person's name in Chinese characters and a profile picture. But just as Jin Kyung was about to see the person's face, she was suddenly thrown back by an invisible force and fainted. Her henchmen were about to take her to the hospital when she slowly regained consciousness. At this point, the sorceress Jin Kyung became even more certain that the evil spirit possessing her was carrying out an extremely powerful curse. Although Jin Kyung hadn't seen the opponent's face, she could guess who it was from the unique method of casting the curse. Upon returning home, Jin Kyung called Chairman Jong Hyun to warn him to hide all his personal belongings, because after summoning Ju Hwan's spirit, Jin Kyung knew that the person casting the curse this time possessed immense magical power. Moreover, that person was targeting Chairman Jong Hyun. Hearing this, the chairman became more vigilant. Meanwhile, Jin and reporter Jin-hee were talking. The reporter was still haunted by Ju Hwan's death, but So Jin claimed that Jin-hee was the one who asked her to curse him. Jin-hee admitted that she had acted out of anger at the time, but she couldn't take back what she had said. Jin-hee asked why So Jin hated Chairman Jong Hyun. So Jin began to recount her mother's death 10 years ago. So Jin had personally witnessed the face of the person who murdered her mother. She couldn't forget Chairman Jong Hyun's wicked laugh. It turned out that over 10 years ago, Chairman Jong Hyun was just an unknown nobody. He suffered business losses, which led to his wife divorcing him. He even stole his mother's land deeds and mortgaged them to get money for investments. However, his mother believed her son was possessed by demons. Therefore, she went to So Jin's mother to perform a ritual to drive away the spirits haunting her son. At that time, Jong Hyun didn't believe in spiritual matters. He ignored his mother's requests to perform the ritual, refusing to listen. As a result, his attitude caused the ceremony to fail. So Jin observed the entire event, and she knew for sure that Jong Hyun would be possessed by evil spirits. On the way home, Chairman Jong Hyun was suddenly followed by a group of evil spirits. They transformed into a thick black smoke, obscuring the car's view, and slowly entered Jong Hyun's body. Jong Hyun narrowly avoided a serious accident, but luckily he regained consciousness in time. However, from that fateful moment, evil began to creep in and take root in his soul. After escaping, Jong Hyun drove to a rest stop on the mountainside. As he was about to get out, a woman's car blocked his way. He was forced to crawl through the other side of the car to get out. Suddenly, he received a call from a subordinate informing him that the company's investment plan had failed again. While Jong Hyun was fuming, the woman's dog started barking incessantly. Jong Hyun still pretended to be cheerful and picked up the dog, but instead of returning the dog to its owner, he directly threw it down the deep cliff. After committing that cruel act, Jong Hyun wore a sinister, triumphant smile. Returning to reality, So Jin confidently asserted to reporter Jin-hee that Chairman Jong Hyun had definitely been possessed by an evil spirit. Because the exorcism ritual performed by So's mother that year had completely failed, Jong Hyun should have suffered misfortune. But not only was he unharmed, his career had also skyrocketed. All of Jong Hyun's success was due to the power of the evil spirit residing within him. Even the unusually rapid growth of the forest group was problematic. Perhaps the dark forces were plotting some terrible conspiracy against humanity. So Jin earnestly begged reporter Jin-hee to help her find a personal item of Chairman Jong Hyun so she could place a curse on him. So Jin warned that if Jong Hyun wasn't eliminated soon, the demon within him would harm all of mankind. Reporter Jin-hee remained half believing, half doubting. In essence, Jin-hee's goal is to use the power of the law to bring both the Forest Corporation and Chairman Jong Hyun's crimes to justice. Meanwhile, Officer Jang happily returns home to his pregnant wife. His wife wants him to resign from the police station so he can stay home and care for her during her upcoming childbirth. Furthermore, she constantly worries that her husband might be in danger while on duty, meaning their unborn child will never see its father. Initially, Officer Jang hesitates because Chief Sung-joon is injured in the leg, and his team is also facing an extremely complex case. But when he sees the tears streaming down his wife's face, Officer Jang's heart softens. He affectionately promised his wife that he would ask Chief Sung-joon to let him leave work early. The next morning, Officer Jang went to work at the station. Before going inside, he practiced outside how to deliver a convincing resignation speech so that the chief would agree immediately. Just as Chief Sung-joon walked by, Officer Jang intended to seize the opportunity to ask for leave. But when Officer Jang saw his superior's limping gait, he hesitated and didn't dare speak. At this moment, Chief Sung-joon secretly gave Officer Jang a pen cap he had found in his wife's room. Officer Jang immediately recognized it as the missing pen cap of the newspaper editor, Ju Hwan. Officer Jang asked the chief in surprise where he had found it. Sung-joon, fearing that his wife would become a suspect in the murder case, decided to keep the truth a secret. He didn't tell Officer Jang the source of the evidence. Sung-joon only instructed his subordinates to discreetly investigate the connection between the Forest Group and Ju Hwan's death. Officer Jang, overly enthusiastic about his work, forgot his promise to his wife. Officer Jang solemnly pledged to his team leader that he would complete the assigned task excellently. Meanwhile, Chairman Jong-hyun was having his office cleaned up. According to the warning from the sorcerer Jin Kyung, the enemy targeting Jong-hyun would use his personal belongings to cast a curse. Therefore, all of Jong-hyun's personal items had to be carefully stored or destroyed. Jong-hyun's clothes were also to be used only once and then burned immediately. Jong-hyun was also forced to hide at home until the mysterious cursor was dealt with. After everything was cleaned up, Chairman Jong-hyun instructed his secretary to go to the sorcerer Jin Kyung to ask for some protective amulets. The Forest Group was about to hold an important product launch event, and Jong-hyun couldn't be absent. The secretary didn't dare disobey and immediately went to see the sorceress, Jin Kyung. Initially, Jin Kyung strongly opposed letting Jong-hyun go out at this sensitive time, but because the secretary pleaded so persistently, she reluctantly agreed and made some protective amulets for the chairman. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the sorceress Jin Kyung asked the secretary if he had found out who was holding Ju Hwan's pen cap. She assured him that if he found that person, she would quickly catch the one who was casting the curse on the chairman. However, the secretary still shook his head in frustration. He had no leads. Unexpectedly, the secretary received a secret call from an informant at the police station. The informant reported that he had just seen Officer Jang putting the pen cap, the evidence, into the evidence room. As soon as he obtained this valuable information, the secretary immediately reported it to the sorceress Jin Kyung. Meanwhile, he also called to report the situation to Chairman Jong-hyun. Upon hearing this, Chairman Jong-hyun coldly ordered his subordinates to immediately deal with Officer Jang to cover up the evidence. Returning to Sojin's story, she was once again bullied by a group of female students at school. Among them was the same girl who had been with the group of male bullies the day before. Sojin used the example of the male student she had made to bleed from the nose to warn the unruly students. She warned that if these girls didn't know their lesson, the consequences this time wouldn't just be a simple nosebleed, but possibly death. The girls were somewhat confused and frightened. However, hatred overcame their fear, and they were determined not to let Sojin off the hook. The female students gathered together and performed a seance. They used a mysterious online app called The Cursed Forest to place a cruel curse on Sojin. On that fateful evening, Officer Jang met with a former forest employee to investigate the company's internal workings further. The employee revealed a shocking secret. Forest's resounding success was all thanks to the Cursed Forest app. This app operates on a very simple yet terrifying mechanism. Users simply post a photo and their reason for cursing someone online, along with a hashtag. If the post receives a large amount of interaction from the online community, the company will carry out the curse on the victim. Officer Jang sensed a scam, but the employee confidently asserted that many cases of curses had come true. This only increased Officer Jang's suspicions about the mysterious forces manipulating Forest. After the meeting, Officer Jang happily called his wife to let her know he had bought a lot of delicious Srang food and was on his way home. Upon arriving at the door, Officer Jang saw a strange car parked blocking the entrance. Curious, Officer Jang peeked inside the car when he was suddenly attacked by a gang of thugs. His bag of fruit and phone were scattered everywhere. A short time later, they dragged Officer Jang to an abandoned construction site. The thugs took turns brutally assaulting him. Watching from a distance, Chairman Jong-hyun and his secretary seemed extremely amused. The chairman appeared particularly excited to witness the painful abuse. The gang leader questioned Officer Jang about where he had obtained the pen cap because he despised the criminals so much. Officer Jang resolutely refused to say a word. Seeing Officer Jang's stubbornness, the thugs became even more brutal. The leader felt that if they continued beating Officer Jang, he would die on the spot, so he ordered them to stop. Unexpectedly, as soon as they loosened their grip, Officer Jang immediately fought back. He cleverly pushed one of the thugs to the ground as a cushion and then desperately ran out of the abandoned building. The thugs chased after him. Despite being covered in injuries, Officer Jang's strong will to survive allowed him to outrun them. However, Chairman Jong-hyun, observing from above, showed no sign of worry. He wore a sinister smile, and his eyes gradually turned pitch black. Just as Officer Jang reached the main road, an invisible force suddenly grabbed his feet. Officer Jang's body began to lose control, and he staggered into the middle of the street. Just then, a truck sped towards him. The truck ran over Officer Jang, taking the life of the brave police officer. After using dark magic to kill Officer Jang, Chairman Jong-hyun suddenly fainted from exhaustion. Fortunately, his secretary was there to support him. Meanwhile, Officer Jang's wife waited anxiously for her husband to return. Worried, she called him, but he didn't answer. She then called Chief Sung-joon to inquire about his whereabouts. Sung-joon was at home with his wife, reporter Jin-hee. Hearing the tragic news, couple rushed to find Jang. The heartbreaking result was that they had to go to the morgue to identify his body. Officer Jang was gone forever, leaving behind his young wife and unborn child. Seeing the severely injured body of his close colleague, Captain Sung Jun was filled with immense pain and regret. When he met Officer Jang's wife outside, Sung Jun knew the truth. Officer Jang had come to the station that day to resign. Sung Jun blamed himself, thinking that if he hadn't assigned Officer Jang the job, perhaps Officer Jang's family would still be happily preparing to welcome a new member. Overhearing their tearful conversation, reporter Jin Hee couldn't contain her anger. Jin Hee immediately contacted Sojin. Jin Hee decided to cooperate with the girl to curse Chairman Jong Hyun. Jin Hee understood that Officer Jang's wrongful death could only have been caused by the cruel hand of the chairman. The next day, the serious crime investigation team arrived at the scene to investigate. Captain Sung Jun found Officer Jang's dropped phone. It still contained a recording of a crucial conversation between Officer Jang and a former forest employee. That evening, the police department held an emergency meeting. The autopsy results showed that before the traffic accident, the victim had been kidnapped and brutally assaulted, sustaining numerous serious injuries. Combined with the content of the obtained audio recording, the police concluded preliminarily that Officer Jang was attacked while investigating wrongdoing at Forest Corporation. He then crashed while fleeing. Forest Corporation was undoubtedly implicated in this murder. To uncover the truth behind Officer Jang's death, the chief ordered the Serious Crime Unit to immediately launch a special investigation targeting Chairman Jong Hyun and Forest Corporation. Although everyone in the team was deeply saddened by the loss of their colleague, they quickly regained their composure. They are determined to investigate and seek justice for Officer Jang. The mole, however, is filled with remorse. He never imagined his wrongdoing would lead to such serious consequences and cost his colleague his life. He can only hang his head in shame, consumed by guilt. Meanwhile, sorceress Jin Kyung visits Chairman Jong Hyun. She announces that she has discovered the true identity of the demon residing within the cursed person. It is Inugami, a powerful evil spirit from Japan. This demon is created using an extremely cruel method. People bury dogs alive, leaving only their heads exposed. Then, they place food in front of them so the dogs can see it, but cannot eat it. The accumulated hunger and resentment reach an extreme point, and when the dogs die of starvation, they transform into ferocious, evil spirits. These evil spirits then possess human bodies, turning them into cursed sorcerers with terrifying powers. The more cruel the method of creation, the more terrifying the power of Inugami. To counter the force, cursing the chairman, sorceress Jin Kyung devised a special method. She used a divine artifact from Japan, believed to be capable of eliminating the evil spirits of that nation. Jin Kyung had to enlist the help of a friend in Japan to search for a long time, and finally, she found an ancient drumhead. This drumhead had absorbed the essence of heaven and earth for over 1,000 years, transforming into a divine artifact. It possessed enough power to destroy the evil spirit Inugami. However, the price to bring this treasure back to Korea was 800 million won. Chairman Jong Hyun didn't hesitate. He declared that as long as he could eliminate the person targeting him, the price was no problem. Seeing Chairman Jong Hyun accept the price, sorceress Jin Kyung happily departed. Secretary Lee Hwan escorted her to the door. Suddenly, Jin Kyung grabbed Lee Hwan's collar with a furious expression. It turned out Jin Kyung had recently discovered that Chairman Jong Hyun had secretly used the evil spirit within him to curse someone. Lee Hwan trembled as he confessed that the chairman had used dark magic to murder a police officer the previous night. Jin Kyung sternly warned Lee Hwan to keep a close eye on Chairman Jong Hyun. The upcoming IPO of Forest Company meant the chairman couldn't afford any mishaps. She instructed Lee Hwan to carefully safeguard the chairman's personal belongings and advised him to keep Jong Hyun indoors for the next 2 days while she dealt with the curse. Lee Hwan didn't dare argue, but as soon as Jin Kyung was out of sight, he started cursing her. Meanwhile, at the orphanage where Sojin lived, a charity group arrived to visit. Leading the group was a female singer, embroiled in a personal scandal. She wanted to do charity work to whitewash her image. Accidentally, a child from the orphanage touched the singer. She immediately flew into a rage and severely scolded the child, fearing they would soil her expensive clothes. She was doing charity work, but her heart was so wicked. So Jin, standing nearby, witnessed the entire scene. While the child hid in a corner feeling hurt, so Jin approached and asked if the child wanted to curse the singer. But the child's innocent heart remained untainted by hatred. The child shook their head, indicating they didn't hate anyone. So Jin intended to let it go, but unexpectedly, So Jin saw the singer berating her colleague. The singer even showed contempt for orphan children like Sojin. This action forced Sojin to change her mind. Seeing the singer had just left behind her gloves, Sojin wanted to use them to cast a curse. Unexpectedly, Sojin received a call from reporter Jin Hee. Jin Hee said she had something very important to discuss. So Jin decided to temporarily spare the arrogant singer. Reporter Jin Hee drove to the orphanage gate to pick up Sojin. As soon as Sojin got into the car, Jin Hee went straight to the point. Jin Hee said she wanted Sojin to help her curse Chairman Jong Hyun. The reason was that because of a pen cap belonging to a deceased person, Jong Hyun had heartlessly ordered the murder of police officer Jung, a very close friend of Jin Hee and her husband. So Jin didn't think twice and immediately agreed, as she herself had long harbored the intention of cursing Jong Hyun. So Jin reiterated the necessary conditions for performing the ritual: a photo, the target's name in Chinese characters, and personal belongings. Reporter Jin Hee promised she would get those things soon. For Jin Hee at this moment, the sooner Chairman Jong Hyun left, the better. Back at the newsroom, reporter Jin Hee called private investigator Kim Pil-sung to ask for his help in stealing a personal item from Chairman Jong-hyun. Detective Kim smelled the money and immediately agreed. Then, Detective Kim arranged to meet Chairman Jong-hyun's private driver. Detective Kim offered a large sum of money and asked the driver to retrieve the chairman's belongings. The driver was initially hesitant because the chairman had been very cautious lately and suspicious of his belongings, but since the driver had already taken the money, he had no choice but to agree. That evening, the driver returned and drove Chairman Jong-hyun as usual. He accidentally saw the chairman using a lighter. Knowing this was a good opportunity, as soon as he dropped Chairman Jong-hyun off at the hotel to meet his business partner, the driver immediately ran to a convenience store. He bought a lighter that was identical in design, and at the same time, he texted Detective Kim to inform him that he would obtain the target's personal belongings that night. Afterward, the driver returned to the hotel to pick up Chairman Jong-hyun. Unexpectedly, Jong-hyun had been plied with alcohol by his business partner and was completely drunk. The driver realized this was his golden opportunity. He drove Chairman Jong-hyun home. Seeing Jong-hyun fast asleep in the back seat, the driver quietly swapped the lighter he had prepared with Chairman Jong-hyun's. During the process, he almost got caught by Jong-hyun, but luckily, the driver cleverly fabricated a story to avoid him. After safely dropping Chairman Jong-hyun off at home, the driver hurried to his meeting with Detective Kim. Just after handing the lighter over to Detective Kim and receiving the remaining payment, he received a call from Chairman Jong-hyun. He was surprised that the driver's theft of the lighter had been discovered so quickly. It turned out that Chairman Jong-hyun had suddenly felt like smoking at home, so he took out a cigarette and lit it. He suddenly remembered that his lighter had run out of gas at the hotel, but the one in his hand was still full. Knowing the driver had swapped it, Chairman Jong-hyun immediately called the driver to question him. Hearing the chairman's angry tone, the driver knew he had no way out, so he quickly hung up to find a way to escape. Meanwhile, Chairman Jong-hyun couldn't get the driver to come back, so he hurriedly called his secretary, Lee Hwan. Jong-hyun informed him that he had just lost his personal belongings to someone else, but the chairman still had a bit of luck. Secretary Lee Hwan informed him that the magic drum, purchased overseas by sorcerer Jin Kyung, had just arrived at the company. Lee Hwan urged Chairman Jong-hyun to return to the forest headquarters immediately for protection. Meanwhile, Detective Kim, having just retrieved Chairman Jong-hyun's lighter, immediately called reporter Jin Hee. Jin Hee also contacted So-jin, saying they could perform the curse on Chairman Jong-hyun right now. So Jin quickly prepared her equipment and set off. Reporter Jin Hee drove to Detective Kim's place to retrieve the lighter. Afterwards, she returned to pick up So-jin. So-jin was waiting for Jin Hee in front of the orphanage gate. As soon as she saw reporter Jin Hee's car, So-jin immediately got in. Jin Hee took out the things she had prepared: the lighter, the Chinese characters for Chairman Jong-hyun's name, and a photo of Chairman Jong-hyun. So-jin hastily performed the curse ritual on Jong-hyun right in the car. At the same time, Chairman Jong-hyun arrived back at the company. Suddenly, Jong-hyun's entire body began to ache intensely. The sorceress Jin Kyung had her men tie Jong-hyun up. Then she took out a magical drum. Jin Kyung began beating the drum frantically to dispel So-jin's curse. On the other side, So-jin sensed someone using magic against her, so she concentrated even more intensely on chanting her spells. A tense magical battle ensued. Everything around the chairman's office began to shake violently. Chairman Jong-hyun's pain intensified, and he screamed in despair. The two sorceresses fighting each other were drenched in sweat, but neither would give up. When both reached their limits, So-jin suffered a backlash from the curse, causing her eyes to bleed. Jin Hee's car window shattered due to the invisible pressure, so Jin only managed to say that she had failed before she fainted. Reporter Jin Hee was extremely worried about So-jin's condition. On the other side of the battlefield, the sorceress Jin Kyung was slightly better off. The divine drum, worth a fortune, was shattered, and Jin Kyung collapsed to the floor from exhaustion. However, Jin Kyung's body did not suffer any serious injuries. Chairman Jong-hyun also opened his eyes and was completely unharmed. The sorceress Jin Kyung and the chairman laughed heartily, knowing that their side had won this life-or-death magic duel. Moreover, Jin Kyung had a great gain. She realized that the energy of the person who cursed Chairman Jong-hyun belonged to the daughter of the former sorceress, the woman whom the chairman had ordered eliminated 10 years earlier. The next day, the sorceress Jin Kyung sent her disciple, Ju Bong, to the sorceress's old village to investigate. Through the accounts of the local people, Ju Bong knew about the fire that year and the mysterious disappearance of the sorceress's daughter. Ju Bong confirmed that the girl's name was Baek So-jin. After gathering some information, Ju Bong went to So-jin's old house, but it had been completely burned to ashes. Ju Bong immediately called to inform the shaman Jin Kyung. At this time, So-jin was in the hospital receiving treatment. When she woke up, she saw reporter Jin Hee attending to her. As soon as So-jin opened her eyes, Jin Hee quickly asked her what had happened. So-jin explained that she had suffered a backlash because the shaman next to Chairman Jong-hyun had used a sacred object to cast a protective spell. At this point, reporter Jin Hee took out a lighter and wondered if So-jin could use it to curse Chairman Jong-hyun again. So-jin shook her head, saying that was impossible. Now, So-jin's only way to cast the curse was to directly touch the chairman's skin. She reminded reporter Jin Hee that they had to silence Detective Kim immediately to prevent him from revealing their involvement to Chairman Jong-hyun's faction. Ironically, Chairman Jong-hyun was also recovering in the same hospital. Although not severely injured, he still came to the hospital for a checkup. Chairman Jong-hyun questioned the sorceress Jin Kyung about the fate of the person who cursed him. Jin Kyung triumphantly said that the person would either die die or be left half dead. She also revealed to the chairman that Ju Bong had discovered the cursor's identity, the daughter of the sorceress they had murdered years ago, named Sojin. Chairman Jong-hun wanted to quickly capture the girl, so he ordered his secretary, Lee Hwan, to arrest the driver and interrogate him to find out who was Sojin's accomplice. After assigning the task of protecting the chairman to Secretary Lee Hwan, the sorceress Jin Kyung left. Upon reaching the hospital lobby, Jin Kyung suddenly sensed the familiar aura of Sojin. She cautiously made her way to Sojin's room, but unexpectedly mistook her for someone else. Because Sojin had also noticed something unusual, she quickly hid in a corner to observe. Unable to find her target, the sorceress Jin Kyung turned and left. Sojin secretly followed Jin Kyung outside. Sojin reasoned that if the sorceress was there, then Chairman Jong-hyun must also be receiving treatment there. A daring plan suddenly formed in Sojin's mind. She searched the hospital for Chairman Jong-hyun's room. She accidentally saw Jong-hyun and Secretary Lee Hwan walking out into the hallway. She decided to hide in the elevator and planned to secretly touch the chairman while he was alone, then cast her curse. But Chairman Jong-hyun remained highly vigilant. He withdrew his hand, an action that caused Sojin to miss a golden opportunity. She reluctantly left the elevator, helplessly watching Chairman Jong-hyun calmly walk away. Meanwhile, reporter Jin-hee approached Detective Kim, seeking to buy back his phone. Jin-hee wanted to erase all contact between them. Although she had already given Detective Kim 3 million won, the greedy detective demanded another 3 million won before handing over the phone. Having no other choice, Jin-hee compromised. She then went out to withdraw more money. When she returned and handed over the money, Detective Kim agreed to give her the phone. However, Detective Kim still had Jin-hee's information in his personal notebook. Reporter Jin-hee was extremely annoyed by the detective's attitude, which felt like he was mocking her. When Jin-hee retrieved the piece of paper with contact information torn from her notebook, she also knew that Detective Kim had secretly investigated her background. Unaware of the impending disaster, he continued to joke around with Jin-hee. Reporter Jin-hee stormed off angrily, a murderous intent rising in her heart. At the police station, the serious crime unit was grappling with the death of Officer Jang. Suddenly, team leader Sung-joon discovered that a subordinate had been absent from work for several days. Sung-joon suspected that the subordinate was too distraught over Officer Jang's death to quit without reason. Team leader Sung-joon went to the subordinate's house to inquire. The subordinate was still tormented by the loss of his colleague. Upon seeing team leader Sung-joon, he burst into tears, remorsefully admitting that he was a mole planted by Forest Company in the police station. Team leader Sung-joon, enraged, grabbed him by the collar and dragged him straight to the station for questioning. There, the mole confessed to all the confidential reports he had sent to Forest. He also admitted that Officer Jang's death was indirectly related to him. He claimed that Officer Jang's death was due to holding director Ju Hwan's pen cap, which led to his fatal accident. After hearing this, team leader Sung-joon felt even more guilty. Just to protect his wife, he had inadvertently caused his subordinate to sacrifice himself. As soon as he left the interrogation room, Sung-joon immediately called his wife. Only now did he frankly ask her about the pen cap. He asked her why such important evidence had appeared on her bed. Reporter Jin-hee didn't want to tell her husband the truth because she was afraid he would worry. But what happened to Officer Jang made Sung-joon extremely worried about his wife's safety. Jin-hee promised to explain everything to her soon, and then immediately hung up. Team leader Sung-joon wondered what kind of dangerous situation his wife was getting herself into. Meanwhile, reporter Jin-hee went to see Forest. Sojin told Jin-hee that Chairman Jong-hyun was also at the hospital. Jin-hee wanted to get Sojin away immediately. Jin-hee recounts how Detective Kim is investigating her. She fears that if Detective Kim is caught by Chairman Jong-hyun, both she and Sojin will be exposed. Sojin devises a plan to directly use a curse to silence Detective Kim permanently. In fact, Jin-hee's initial intention in meeting Sojin was also related to this matter. However, when Jin-hee accidentally reads a message from the detective's daughter to her father, Jin-hee knows it's the little girl's birthday, and she's eagerly yet awaiting her father's return. Jin-hee can't bear to let Sojin cast such a cruel curse. She decides to only destroy the piece of paper with Detective Kim's name on it. However, this soft-heartedness will lead to significant consequences for both of them. As predicted, Detective Kim is happily bringing gifts home to his daughter when he is followed by Chairman Jong-hyun's henchmen. They trail him onto the highway, then break into his car and forcibly abduct him. When he regained consciousness, he realized he was tied up in a warehouse. The driver of Chairman Jong-hyun was also there, being brutally beaten. Seeing the driver being treated so cruelly by the thugs, Detective Kim was terrified. But when asked who hired him to steal the lighter, he stubbornly refused to say anything. Only when the henchmen threatened Detective Kim's family did he stop resisting. Detective Kim finally revealed the name of reporter Jin-hee to them. Today, the Serious Crime Unit had an important meeting. Team leader Sung-joon had obtained from his wife a video recording of the interview between reporter Jin-hee and a deceased former employee of Forest Company. From the employee's testimony in the video, the police knew something shocking. Forest has a very strange subsidiary company. Every year, this company receives approximately 3 billion won solely for consulting purposes. Team leader Sung-joon suspects foul play, but he has no legitimate way to investigate. The chief orders the entire team to search the subsidiary under the guise of investigating smuggling. Recently, there was information that Forest imported goods from abroad worth nearly 1 billion won without notifying the Import-Export Bureau. Team leader Sung-joon follows the chief's instructions and decides to pursue this lead to uncover clues about the disappearance of Officer Jang. Afterward, team leader Sung Joon goes to pick up his wife. Reporter Jin Hee has taken leave to stay at the newsroom because she knows Chairman Jong Hyun is investigating her. Sung Joon asks Jin Hee what she's involved in. Jin Hee finally recounts the whole story about what Sheo Jin were doing. At this point, team leader Sung Joon wonders why So Jin would seek out his wife. Jin Hee believes it was fate that brought the two of them together. She recounted that in high school, she also had a close friend named So Jin. Back then, Jin Hee and her best friend were inseparable. They were often bullied by other students, so they stuck together for support. One day, her best friend couldn't bear it anymore and reported it to the principal. But Jin Hee was too afraid of retaliation from the bullies to bravely testify and expose them along with her best friend. This made her friend extremely sad. Feeling betrayed, she jumped from a high floor to end her own life. Returning to reality, reporter Jin Hee was filled with remorse. She thought that if she had been brave enough to stand up for her best friend, her friend wouldn't have lost her life so unjustly. Team leader Sung Joon comforted his wife, telling her to let bygones be bygones. Jin Hee had been trying to accept it for a long time. However, now that another gripe, So Jin had appeared and asked for her help, reporter Jin Hee decided to try one last time to atone for her past mistakes. Team leader Sung Joon was deeply moved by this and encouraged his wife, promising to help her in every way possible. Afterwards, reporter Jin Hee led her husband to Sinus, So Jin's hiding place. Only when they met So Jin in person did team leader Sung Joon believe what his wife had said about her supernatural abilities. He gave her a new phone with a GPS tracker and told her to throw away the old one to avoid being tracked. He instructed Jin Hee to stay here with So Jin for safety and to leave the investigation into the sorcerer Jin Kyung and Forrest's subsidiary to him and the police. Reporter Jin Hee agreed and let her husband leave, but as soon as Sung Joon was out of sight, she immediately discussed another battle plan with So Jin. Meanwhile, in another development, a mysterious tree was growing in Chairman Jong Hun's house. He opened the Cursed Forest app to check it, then took pictures of people he wanted to curse and hung them on the tree's leaves. The number of pictures was countless. Chairman Jong Hun continued browsing the app and accidentally discovered the name Baek So Jin. This was a post from her malicious classmates requesting that a curse be placed on her. Chairman Jong Hyun immediately recognized the face. This was the person he had met in the hospital elevator. He understood something and was overjoyed. He hastily summoned the sorcerer Jin Kyung. A few hours later, Jin Kyung arrived. Chairman Jong Hyun pointed to a picture of So Jin and told Jin Kyung that this was the cursed sorcerer they were hunting. Chairman Jong Hyun wanted to immediately capture So Jin, but Jin Kyung stopped him. She reminded Jong Hyun that Forrest was about to go public, and at this sensitive time, the chairman couldn't afford any mishaps. Jin Kyung promised to take care of So Jin and those who stood in their way on Jong Hyun's behalf. After listening to her advice, Chairman Jong Hyun finally gave up his obsession with capturing So Jin himself. Meanwhile, the police arrived at the mysterious subsidiary headquarters of Forrest. However, they only met Jin Kyung's disciple. Jin Kyung had vanished without a trace. The police investigation yielded no valuable clues other than some strange spiritual artifacts. Meanwhile, the police summoned Secretary Lee Hwan to the station for questioning, but Lee Hwan responded in a provocative tone, trying to conceal the dark secret behind Forrest and the information about the cursed app. The police also lacked sufficient evidence to incriminate him, so they had no choice but to release Lee Hwan. Before leaving, Lee Hwan even used Chief Sung Joon's wife to provoke him. Lee Hwan advised Sung Joon to protect his wife carefully. Chief Sung Joon was furious. He called his wife, telling her that the police hadn't found anything more about Forrest's subsidiary. The sorceress his wife mentioned was nowhere to be seen, and the name of the subsidiary owner on the paperwork was only Ju Bong. The sorceress Jin Kyung was a mysterious figure, never having appeared in public. Reporter Jin Hee asked her husband to send her Ju Bong's information. After obtaining the file, she immediately showed it to So Jin, but So Jin didn't recognize Ju Bong either. However, both decided to start with this person to force the sorcerer Jin Kyung to reveal himself. That evening, Ju Bong received an anonymous message from reporter Jin Hee. She said she was holding his personal belongings and was preparing to perform a cruel curse. Ju Bong was terrified. Reporter Jin Hee gave him a way out, but he had to meet her at a certain place to negotiate. At the same time, he was not to tell Chairman Jong Hyun or the sorcerer Jin Kyung. If he disobeyed Jin Hee, he would stop breathing immediately. Ju Bong anxiously rushed to the meeting place with reporter Jin Hee. Upon arrival, Ju Bong knelt down to beg Jin Hee for his life. Reporter Jin Hee coldly said that if he answered a few questions truthfully, she would spare his life. Ju Bong promised to tell everything he knew. First, reporter Jin Hee wanted to know what the sorcerer Jin Kyung had done on the day before. So Jin's curse on Chairman Jong Hyun failed. Ju Bong recounted the story of the Japanese magic drum. Jin Hee wondered if it could be used again. Ju Bong told her that the magic drum was completely broken. Secondly, reporter Jin Hee wanted to know the real name of the sorceress Jin Kyung. However, Ju Bong had no idea because Jin Kyung always used a pseudonym. No one knew the sorceress's real name. Ju Bong only knew that Jin Kyung was also cursed by an extremely powerful spirit. Reporter Jin Hee moved on to the final question. What was Forrest's true purpose? Ju Bong tremblingly replied that he didn't know everything, but he was willing to reveal the little information he had. It turned out that the Forrest Corporation was rushing to prepare for its IPO. On that momentous day, Chairman Jong Hyun and sorceress Jin Kyung planned to perform a large-scale curse ritual. They had prepared a magical tree, and at the same time, they invited many skilled sorcerers from abroad to assist. Reporter Jin Hee wondered what Forrest Forrest was really planning. However, Jubong only knew that much. At this point, Jin Hee threatened Jubong and forced him to become her informant. No matter what Chairman Jong Hyun and sorcerer Jin Kyung did, Jubong had to report back to Jin Hee immediately. Then, Jin Hee and Sojin left, leaving Jubong trembling, because although he had just escaped danger, his fear had not yet subsided. Back in the car, reporter Jin Hee and Sojin discussed the information they had just gathered. Whatever the true purpose of the Forest Corporation was, it was certainly not good. Both decided to work together to stop that wicked plan from happening. The next morning, a group of foreign sorcerers were solemnly welcomed by Forest staff at the airport. Among them, the most powerful was a white-bearded sorcerer named Otomo. He was personally greeted by the sorcerer Jin Kyung. This old sorcerer Otomo would be the main officiant at Forest's upcoming curse ceremony. Jubong secretly informed reporter Jin Hee of this. Jin Hee and Sojin wondered what kind of curse they wanted to cast that required so many powerful sorcerers. Jubong shook his head, saying he didn't know. Jin Hee then told Jubong to investigate further, and then she hung up. Later, team leader Sung Joon came to see Jin Hee. He wanted to take his wife somewhere, so Jin offered to go along, but the couple told Sojin to wait at home for safety. Meanwhile, Jubong secretly rummaged through his master Jin Kyung's personal belongings. Jubong found a list of Forest's secret curses. Inside was a list of people being posted on the forum of Cursed Forest app. Jubong was utterly bewildered when he realized the horrifying truth. This ritual by Forest wasn't just targeting one individual, but cursing a whole group of people at once. Suddenly, Jubong's phone rang. The caller was the sorceress Jin Kyung, which startled Jubong. Jin Kyung demanded that Jubong come to her immediately to greet the great sorceress Otomo. Jubong was quite worried, fearing Jin Kyung had discovered he was a mole, but he still had to go to avoid further suspicion. On the way, Jubong accidentally noticed that police were following him. He immediately stopped his car and warned the officer not to follow him anymore. Knowing that his cover had been blown, the officer contacted his colleague, telling him to be more careful to avoid being discovered. On another side, his colleague was monitoring Chairman Jong Hyun at his private residence. Seeing Jong Hyun preparing to move, he immediately reported the situation to team leader Sung Joon. Sung Joon instructed his subordinates to closely follow Chairman Jong Hyun's car to see where he was going. After hanging up, team leader Sung Joon and his wife went to see a professor specializing in ethnology. It turned out that the police had photographed several antique items found in Forest's subsidiary office. Sung Joon and reporter Jin Hee wanted to ask the professor what those items were used for. After researching, the professor only knew that the antiques were used to ward off evil spirits. They had no other purpose. Upon hearing this, reporter Jin Hee felt extremely disappointed. She had a feeling that it wasn't just that simple use. She was certain that Chairman Jong Hyun had a much more sinister scheme. Unexpectedly, team leader Sung Joon received a call from his colleague who was monitoring Chairman Jong Hyun. The colleague reported that Chairman Jong Hyun had moved to Cheonbo Mountain. However, the area was heavily guarded, preventing him from penetrating deep inside the mountain. Team leader Sung Joon instructed his teammate to temporarily withdraw. Upon returning to the station, they would jointly implement a new plan. Afterwards, Sung Joon and his wife left the professor's office. Meanwhile, Jubong had just arrived at the sorceress Jin Kyung's place when she dragged him to greet the great sorceress Otomo. Unexpectedly, the white-bearded sorcerer Omo, with just a glance, recognized Jubong's betrayal of Jin Kyung. Upon hearing this, the sorceress Jin Kyung angrily dragged Jubong into a private room. She took a talisman, burned it, and then pressed it directly against Jubong's forehead. Jubong felt immense pain. Before his eyes, hallucinations appeared. Saw his teacher transform into a demon. The sorceress Jin Kyung had only intended to threaten Jubong to force him to reveal the mastermind behind it all. Jubong, trembling with fear, recounted the events, explaining how Sojin and reporter Jin Hee had used a curse to threaten his life and force him to work for them. Jin Kyung searched Jubong and found a list of Forest's curses in his bag. She suspected Jubong wanted to hand over this confidential document to reporter Jin Hee, which only fueled her anger. Despite Jubong's sincere apologies and desperate pleas, Jin Kyung ruthlessly used another curse to torture him. Afterward, Jin Kyung ordered Jubong to call reporter Jin Hee, luring her to their location. Jin Kyung wanted to use thugs to get rid of Jin Hee once and for all. Jubong, terrified, obeyed. Upon receiving Jubong's call, reporter Jin Hee immediately called Sojin to inform her of the situation. Then, the two hurried to the meeting place. At this time, the ethnology professor was carefully examining the photos that team leader Sung Joon had brought. He was shocked to realize that besides the items used for exorcism, there were also some items used for cursing others. The professor immediately contacted team leader Sung Joon to inform him of this new discovery. Hearing the professor's analysis, Sung Joon began to feel uneasy. He called his wife for her opinion. Through her husband's words, reporter Jin Hee understood the problem. Perhaps Chairman Jong Hyun wanted to use the exorcism items to expel evil spirits from himself. Then he would transfer those evil spirits to possess other people. However, after hearing the explanation, team leader Sung Joon still found it hard to believe. Reporter Jin Hee didn't have much time to argue with her husband, so she quickly hung up and continued driving to the meeting place with Jubong. As soon as Jin Hee arrived, the sorcerer Jin Kyung unexpectedly appeared. She quickly placed a talisman on reporter Jin Hee's forehead, paralyzing her and preventing her from screaming. The henchman then drugged Jin Hee and carried her into a car. The sorceress Jin Kyung glanced around, searching for Sojin. However, Sojin, having witnessed everything from afar, managed to hide in a secluded corner to avoid Jin Kyung. After the villains took reporter Jin Hee away, way, Sojin immediately called Sung Jun to report the incident. Knowing his wife had been kidnapped, Sung Jun was extremely worried. He told Sojin to go home and wait for him while he went to find Jin Hee, but Sojin didn't answer and immediately hung up. Meanwhile, reporter Jin Hee was taken to an abandoned house. She slowly regained consciousness and saw the sorceress Jin Kyung greeting her with a sinister smile. Jin Kyung used threats to force Jin Hee to reveal Sojin's hiding place, but Jin Hee firmly stated that she would never betray Sojin. Instead, Jin Hee questioned Jin Kyung about Forrest's true intentions in the upcoming launch. Although the sorceress Jin Kyung didn't say anything, reporter Jin Hee guessed the entire plot. Jin Kyung wanted to borrow the power of foreign sorcerers to expel the evil spirit from Chairman Jong Hyun, then curse it onto thousands of other people through an application, using the evil spirit to manipulate society. Seeing that Jin Hee knew the truth, Jin Kyung was furious. She believed that Jubong had revealed the secret to Jin Hee, so she used him as a scapegoat to threaten Jin Hee. The sorceress Jin Kyung placed a talisman on Jubong's forehead, then injected a ferocious evil spirit into his body. Dark red veins appeared on Jubong's body, and he immediately fainted. Witnessing that horrifying scene, reporter Jin Hee was so frightened, she fell to the ground, but Jin Hee managed to pick up a broken brick lying nearby. At this moment, the sorceress Jin Kyung sat down next to Jubong. She coldly stated that she had possessed his body with the soul of a blood-sucking demon. Jubong would live his entire life craving blood and flesh. Jin Kyung turned to reporter Jin Hee and asked if she wanted to be possessed by a lustful demon, constantly craving men, or if she would obediently tell her the location of Sojin. Reporter Jin Hee remained unyielding. As the sorceress Jin Kyung was preparing to take out a new talisman, Jin Hee's phone suddenly rang. Jin Kyung answered so she could speak to Sojin. Sojin said she wanted to use herself to exchange for reporter Jin Hee's safety. Jin Kyung held the phone towards Jin Hee to prove she was still alive. Then Jin Kyung arranged to meet Sojin at a location for a hostage exchange. Sojin wasn't a fool and knew she would be captured immediately if she went there. Sojin demanded that Jin Kyung release the hostages first, then meet her at the subway station. However, as soon as she hung up, Jin Kyung ordered her gang leader to deal with reporter Jin Hee, while she took 3 more henchmen to capture Sojin. The remaining thugs decided to take reporter Jin Hee and Jubong into a car, intending to take them to a deserted place to kill them. Meanwhile, team leader Sung Jun asked his teammates to locate his wife's phone. Fortunately, Jin Hee's phone hadn't been turned off. Sung Jun quickly led the special forces team to rescue his wife. Along the way, Sung Jun discovered his wife's GPS signal was moving. Sung Jun knew Jin Hee was being taken elsewhere, so he quickly told his team to turn the car around and chase after them. Inside the kidnapper's car, Jubong suddenly went berserk, muttering incoherently due to the influence of an evil spirit. Seeing this, the bearded man immediately used tape to cover Jubong's mouth. At this moment, the leader suddenly remembered they had encountered a police car earlier. Sensing something was wrong, he quickly ordered his henchmen to search reporter Jin Hee's bag. The bearded man found a phone with its GPS enabled. The leader immediately stopped the car and threw the phone onto the road to dispose of it. By the time team leader Sung Jun found the phone, lying haphazardly in the middle of the road, he knew he had lost track of his wife. Although the thugs had shaken off the police, they encountered a major incident in the car. Jubong suddenly bit through the tape with all his might. Then he lunged forward and bit the bearded man's ear. The remaining thugs quickly rushed in to stop him. Taking advantage of the chaos, reporter Jin Hee used a piece of broken brick she had picked up earlier to cut the ropes binding her. Then, she used her scarf to tightly strangle the driver. The car immediately lost control and plunged into the field. Everyone in the car was knocked unconscious. After a while, reporter Jin Hee gradually regained consciousness. Jin Hee tried her best to crawl out of the wrecked car to escape, but after a few steps, she staggered and fell due to exhaustion. Unfortunately for her, the leader of the gang had also woken up. He grabbed an iron rod and lunged at Jin Hee, determined not to let her escape. Just as the leader raised the rod to deliver a fatal blow, team leader Sung Jun arrived in time. Seeing his wife in danger, he quickly drew his gun to shoot the leader. His teammates also quickly rushed in to subdue the thug. Reporter Jin Hee narrowly escaped harm. The police quickly called an ambulance to take her to the hospital. Meanwhile, sorceress Jin Kyung arrived at the meeting place at the subway station and called Sojin. Unexpectedly, Sojin dared to openly appear in front of her. Sojin then waved to Jin Kyung to follow her. Jin Kyung sent her henchmen in another direction to intercept her. Sojin cleverly escaped onto the subway. Seeing this, Jin Kyung and her accomplices quickly chased after her into the train car. Jin Kyung pulled out a talisman as a precaution. In the meantime, Sojin quickly hid in a secluded corner, then turned her jacket inside out to disguise herself. Waiting until sorceress Jin Kyung passed by her, Sojin suddenly lunged out, grabbing Jin Kyung's hand tightly. She poured all her strength and hatred into performing the most vicious curse on Jin Kyung to avenge her deceased mother. The sorceress Jin Kyung was powerless to resist. She could only stand frozen, feeling the excruciating pain tearing through her body and soul. When the train reached its next stop, the passengers were horrified to see the sorceress Jin Kyung reduced to a lifeless corpse in a grotesque, contorted position. Everyone panicked and scattered. The thugs who had accompanied Jin Kyung were also frozen in fear. So Jin blended into the chaotic crowd to escape. She smiled contentedly, having finally dealt with a dangerous enemy. Now her next target was Chairman Jong Hyun. Killing him would bring an end to all their grievances. The following morning, Chairman Jong Hyun went to Cheonbo Mountain for his morning exercise. Unexpectedly, he found a giant Buddha head statue on the mountain, known locally as the Demon Buddha. According to legend, this Buddha statue has the power to suppress evil spirits, so any sorcerer near the area cannot use magic. At this time, Chairman Jong-hyun receives a call from Secretary Lee Won. He informs him that sorcerer Jin Kyung has met a tragic end due to a curse. Jong-hyun not only shows no grief or sorrow for his trusted assistant, but also wears a mysterious, triumphant smile. Meanwhile, the Serious Crime Unit has also taken on the murder case of sorcerer Jin Kyung. They are facing difficulties because they have no information about her. All of Jin Kyung's identification documents are forged. However, the police found a list of forest curses in the victim's handbag, leading them to believe she had close ties to the Forest Corporation. Looking at Jin Kyung's strangely contorted body and the autopsy results revealing large amounts of arachidonic acid and ethanolamine in her brain, Chief Sung-joon shudders, remembering the death of director Ju Hwan. Combining his wife's account with the story, Sung-joon suspects that Ju Hwan and Jin Kyung's deaths were caused by the same person. Unexpectedly, Sung-joon receives a call from So-jin. She asks Sung-joon about reporter Jin Hee's situation. Sung-joon tells So-jin that his wife is in the hospital. Sung-joon intends to question her about her whereabouts last night, suspecting her involvement in the murder, but she doesn't answer and hangs up immediately. Afterward, So-jin finds a different outfit to disguise herself. She decides to go alone to Cheonbo Mountain to meet Chairman Jong-hyun and put an end to everything. Meanwhile, the police summons Secretary Lee Hwan to the station for questioning because the death of shaman Jin Kyung is certainly related to Forest. But when the police show him information and a picture of Jin Kyung, the secretary shakes his head and pretends not to know. He brazenly retorted to the police, accusing them of investigating Forest without convincing evidence, damaging the company's reputation as it was about to go public. The secretary's glib tongue made the investigating officer want to punch him in the mouth, but the police had to restrain themselves and follow procedures. In the end, they let Lee Hwan go. As soon as he got into the car, Lee Hwan revealed his true colors. He immediately posted a curse on reporter Jin Hee and team leader Sung-joon on the Cursed Forest app. He even called the technical team to use tricks to artificially increase the post's engagement. He did this with the intention of including the team leader and his wife on the list of victims to be sacrificed in the upcoming curse ritual. At this time, reporter Jin Hee had regained consciousness in the hospital. Upon hearing this news, team leader Sung-joon rushed to visit his wife. The first question Jin Hee asked her husband was where So-jin was. She feared So-jin would be captured by the sorcerer Jin Kyung. Sung-joon took out a photo of a victim's crime scene. Jin Hee immediately recognized it as the sorcerer Jin Kyung. Sung-joon told his wife that Jin Kyung was dead. Reporter Jin Hee understood that So-jin had cast a curse on Jin Kyung. She also guessed that So-jin's next target would be Chairman Jong-hyun. So-jin was certainly on her way to Mount Cheonbo. Reporter Jin Hee was anxious to find So-jin immediately, but her husband stopped her because her health hadn't fully recovered. Sung-joon promised that he and the police would go find So-jin for her. However, with her strong character, Jin Hee insisted on going along. Meanwhile, So-jin had arrived at Mount Cheonbo. She patiently waited until midnight before daring to act. So-jin secretly crept to Chairman Jong-hyun's tent and directly grabbed his finger to perform the curse. Unexpectedly, the magic completely lost its effect. Despite her repeated attempts, the little girl couldn't use it. Chairman Jong-hyun opened his eyes and gave her a sinister smile. Jong-hyun knew So-jin would arrive, so he had been waiting for her. Unable to use the curse, So-jin lunged forward, using her small hands to strangle Chairman Jong-hyun. A child's strength was no match for a grown man's. She was easily grabbed by the neck and dragged out of the tent. At this point, Chairman Jong-hyun revealed to So-jin that the sacred demon Buddha statue had sealed her power. Jong-hyun coldly ordered his bodyguards to deal with So-jin, but So-jin refused to accept her fate. Before closing her eyes, So-jin wanted to ask why Chairman Jong-hyun had so cruelly killed her mother years ago. Jong-hyun's answer took So-jin completely by surprise. It turned out that So-jin's mother was the one who wanted to kill Jong-hyun first, wanting to destroy the evil spirit within him. During the struggle, Jong-hyun accidentally saw red veins on So-jin's hand. The markings were exactly the same as on his own hand. Suddenly, he understood a shocking truth. 10 years ago, the evil spirit hadn't just possessed Jong-hyun, but had also separated and possessed So-jin. Just as So-jin's mother was about to use the curse to end Jong-hyun's life, she saw her daughter writhing in pain, so she softened and stopped. Chairman Jong-hyun thus had a chance to live. Jong-hyun decided to repay So-jin's life to settle the score. He ordered his bodyguards to safely escort So-jin down the mountain. This time, Chairman Jong-hyun spared So-jin, considering his debt repaid. He warned So-jin that if she continued to harass him, he would show no mercy. So-jin, resentful and helpless, descended the mountain. Suddenly, the girl felt dizzy and collapsed to the ground. It turned out that the great sorcerer Otomo was secretly casting a curse on So-jin from afar. Suddenly, his subordinate ran in to announce that Chairman Jong-hyun had ordered the curse on So-jin to be lifted. The white-bearded sorcerer Otomo, though unwilling, had to obey his master's order. Thus, So-jin gradually regained her strength. She slowly walked down the mountain, her heart aching as she remembered her unfortunate mother. The fire of hatred in her heart never died out. She swore she would definitely avenge this blood debt. Just as she reached the foot of the mountain, Chief Sung-joon's car arrived. Reporter Jin Hee rushed over to check on So-jin. So-jin could only sob uncontrollably and hug the reporter tightly, as if finding solace. The police also breathed a sigh of relief that So-jin was safe. Unexpectedly, Chief Sung-joon received an urgent call from the police station. The caller reported that someone had come to file a complaint, providing crucial information information related to the Forest Corporation. It turned out that Detective Pil-sung had come to the police station to confess, accusing Forest Corporation employees of kidnapping and assaulting him. Chief Sung-joon quickly returned to the station to directly question him. Detective Pil-sung began recounting the entire story, identifying the ringleader of the kidnapping group as Secretary Lee Hwan. Thanks to the keen senses of a seasoned detective, Pil-sung remembered the entire route he took while blindfolded to their base. He then meticulously drew a diagram in his notebook. Detective Pil-sung also diligently guided the police on how to solve the case, suggesting they use the notebook to trace the route. Then, they should extract CCTV footage from the surrounding area, which would surely capture the kidnappers. Escorting the hostage, Pil-sung believed that Secretary Lee Hwan's face would also appear in those video clips. Although Chief Sung-joon didn't fully trust Pil-sung, he still ordered his subordinates to seize the notebook. At this point, the police had no choice but to investigate according to the detective's instructions. Sung-joon hoped to find a crucial clue. The next day, Chief Sung-joon led the serious crime team to follow the directions in the notebook, but they searched and couldn't find the hostage-holding location the detective had mentioned. Just as the police were about to return, Detective Pil-sung unexpectedly appeared. He had to personally become the police's guide. Following the symbols in the notebook, Pil-sung finally led the police to the exact place where he had been held. Chief Sung-joon and his team were astonished by the detective's extraordinary memory. Sung-joon immediately dispatched people to collect security camera footage from the surrounding areas. Meanwhile, reporter Jin-hee took Sojin to meet a professor specializing in ethnology because Jin-hee needed to consult him. Upon seeing Sojin, the professor immediately noticed the strange red veins on her hand. He explained that these were called holy marks. Only those who had been connected to a spirit from the underworld through a special spirit possession ritual could possess these marks. The professor wanted to further research the holy marks, but Sojin coldly turned away. At this point, reporter Jin-hee revealed her main purpose. She wanted to ask the professor if there was a way to transfer a soul from one person's body to the bodies of one or more other people. The professor began to explain in detail. He said that depending on the desires of the soul in the host body, it would decide whether or not to change hosts. Changing hosts requires an extremely complex ritual. Usually, if an evil spirit decides to move, it will seek out objects capable of eternal existence, such as artifacts, trees, or stone statues. It wouldn't choose a human as its new host because humans have a short lifespan of less than 100 years. Hearing this, reporters Jin-hee and Sojin had serious questions. What was the ultimate goal of the evil spirit within Chairman Jong-hun? On the way back, Sojin suddenly remembered that Chairman Jong-hun also had red veins on his hands, identical to hers. Reporter Jin-hee also noticed that these red veins closely resembled the logo of the Forest Group. Both of them suddenly realized a terrible conspiracy. Chairman Jong-hun probably wanted to transfer the evil spirit within him to Forest's massive server network. He wanted to exploit the information technology system to curse everyone tagged on the Cursed Forest app, thereby manipulating their minds. If this actually happened, the entire country of South Korea would face an unprecedented catastrophe. Reporter Jin-hee immediately informed her husband of this terrible news. Upon hearing it, Chief Sung-joon found it incredibly hard to believe. He wanted his wife to explain everything more clearly. Unexpectedly, the police received news that Ju Bong had just woken up in the hospital. Sung-joon and his wife decided to go see Ju Bong. Jin-hee planned to explain everything to her husband there. Just as she hung up, Jin informed reporter Jin-hee of a shocking discovery. Both Jin-hee and Chief Sung-joon had been tagged on the Cursed Forest app. If the ritual succeeded, both of them would be cursed to death. Reporter Jin-hee drove straight to the hospital, trying to explain the impending disaster to her husband, but Sung-joon still couldn't fully grasp the seriousness of the situation. Jin-hee decided to question Ju Bong so she could prove to Chief Sung-joon that everything she said was true. However, Ju Bong unexpectedly went berserk. When reporter Jin-hee asked about Forest's true purpose, Ju Bong revealed everything that Jin-hee had suspected. Ju Bong screamed that Chairman Jong-hun's goal was to control everyone to create his own world, a world where law and police didn't exist. Reporter Jin-hee angrily lunged at Ju Bong, but her husband pulled her away. Despite Ju Bong's confession, Chief Sung-joon still didn't believe in the supernatural. He thought his wife was being overly superstitious. Sung-joon took out a photo extracted from the security camera showing Secretary Lee Hwan kidnapping Detective Pil-sung. He asserted that this evidence could help the police arrest the secretary and bring him to justice according to the law. Seeing that her husband stubbornly refused to believe her, reporter Jin-hee silently led Sojin away. The two decided to find a way to stop Chairman Jong-hun themselves. Meanwhile, the police had arrived at the forest headquarters to arrest Secretary Lee Hwan. Despite being handcuffed, Lee Hwan remained extremely confident that he could soon escape punishment. Lee Hwan believed that if he just waited until tomorrow, Forest would be able to manipulate the entire country of South Korea. Team leader Sung-joon knew nothing about the dark forces, so he still acted as if he had triumphed over the criminal. Going back 10 years, the shaman Jin Kyung knew the head of a large hospital. One day, the hospital received a strange patient. Through the head of the department's account, Jin Kyung realized that the patient was possessed by a demon. This person was none other than a young Jong-hyun. Jin Kyung noticed that the evil spirit within Jong-hyun was incredibly powerful, so she wanted to test her strength against it. The head of the department agreed to let Jong-hyun perform a secret exorcism ritual in his hospital room. The ritual ended in a disastrous failure. The exorcist Jin Kyung could only only temporarily subdue the evil spirit, but could not expel it from Jong Hyun's body. Realizing this power was immense and full of potential, Jin Kyung decided to subdue and worship it. She agreed to serve Chairman Jong Hyun in his pursuit of a grand scheme to build a new society. At this time, Jong Hyun was still unaware of the power flowing within him, so he obediently followed whatever Jin Kyung said. Jong Hyun foresaw that someone would hinder him in the future, so she decided to take him to deal with So Jin's mother. Unexpectedly, Jin Kyung's judgment was wrong. The person destined to thwart Jong Hyun's plan was So Jin, not her mother. Returning to reality, So Jin led reporter Jin Hee to the home of Chairman Jong Hyun's mother. Both hoped to find a childhood item belonging to Jong Hyun, so they could carry out another curse. From the old woman's account, they knew that Chairman Jong Hyun had sent people to collect and destroy all his personal belongings. Fortunately, Jong Hyun's mother, out of love and longing for her son, had secretly kept a few childhood toys. Reporter Jin Hee skillfully brought up the topic of Jong Hyun to find an opportunity to steal his school-era fountain pen. At this point, Chairman Jong Hyun's mother sadly recounted the events. Since the ceremony at So Jin's house 10 years ago, Jong Hyun had suddenly changed completely. He became cold and ruthless, even refusing to acknowledge his own mother. Unable to understand, she asked for the reason. Later, she received a harsh reply from Jong Hyun. Her son was dead. It wasn't until So Jin's mother confessed and apologized that she knew her son had been possessed by the evil spirit, Inugami. Hearing the story, reporter Jin Hee was utterly astonished. She pieced together the events and realized a heartbreaking truth. The demon possessing Sojin and Chairman Jong Hyun was actually the same entity. This meant that if Sojin cast a curse on Chairman Jong Hyun, the soul within her body would also suffer a similar curse. Despite knowing the dire consequences, Sojin remained determined to curse Jong Hyun to end all his suffering. Meanwhile, the police held an emergency meeting after arresting Secretary Lee Hwan. Based on the evidence gathered, Lee Hwan was unlikely to escape the charge of kidnapping. However, Chief Sung Joon suspected that Chairman Jong Hyun was the mastermind behind manipulating Lee Hwan. Sung Joon decided to have the Serious Crime Unit investigate this further. He then went into Lee Hwan's interrogation room to question him. Sung Joon wanted Lee Hwan to confess that Forrest and Chairman Jong Hyun were behind the kidnapping and murder. Unexpectedly, the secretary took all the blame upon himself, claiming everything he did was personal revenge and unrelated to Forrest. This put the police in a difficult position. Back in his office, Chief Sung Joon reasoned and guessed the reason for this blind loyalty. Forrest was about to go public, and the secretary would undoubtedly benefit greatly from the preferential stock. If he dragged Forrest into criminal cases now, the company would have to postpone its IPO, leading to a sharp drop in stock prices. Lee Hwan calculated that if he just endured until tomorrow, he would obtain the enormous fortune he had long desired. At this moment, team leader Sung Joon remembered his wife's warning and Ju Bong's deranged confession in the hospital. If what they said was true, humanity was facing an extremely terrible catastrophe. Today was a momentous day. Forrest was officially going public. Grandmaster Otomo arrived at Mount Janbo to escort Chairman Jong Hyun back to headquarters. Otomo would personally protect Jong Hyun during Forrest's IPO against any spiritual attacks. Otomo even carefully placed protective charms throughout the building. This greatly pleased Chairman Jong Hyun, as he felt completely safe. Meanwhile, Forrest's lavish reception for its guests began. Reporters Jin Hee and So Jin daringly infiltrated the building. Unfortunately, they were spotted by the security guards, who shouted and surrounded them. Jin Hee, quick-witted, pulled So Jin away and hid in a secluded corner, allowing them to escape the relentless pursuit. From their hiding place, they saw the cursed tree, the symbol of Forest, displayed prominently in the lobby. The leaves were densely covered with the names of those on the cursed forest list. Only 1 hour remained until the stock listing, and the dark ritual was about to begin. However, Jin Hee and So Jin still hadn't seen Chairman Jong Hyun appear. They decided to remain silent and wait for their opportunity. At the police station, Chief Sung Joon devised a plan to force the secretary to speak. Sung Joon relied on information provided by his wife, who claimed that anyone whose name was tagged on the app would be cursed and lose their life. Sung Joon took advantage of the situation and showed Lee Hwan a digitally altered photo. The photo showed Lee Hwan's name prominently displayed on the list of sacrificial victims. Upon seeing his name, Lee Hwan panicked. Terrified, he hastily abandoned his loyalty and confessed everything to the police about Chairman Jong Hyun's insane plan. The secretary even shamelessly asked to borrow Sung Joon's phone to call the head of the information department. Lee Hwan wanted the head of the information department to remove his name from the list, but the head of the information department, bewildered, told Lee Hwan that his name wasn't in the system. Lee Hwan was utterly confused. At this point, team leader Sung Joon smiled and told Lee Hwan that the photo was just the result of Photoshop. Lee Hwan bitterly realized he had just been tricked. Only then did team leader Sung Joon completely believe his wife's words. He and his teammates immediately set off for Forest headquarters. Upon arrival, the police stormed in, handcuffed the head of the information department, and took him away. Meanwhile, another group of police officers followed Sung Joon deeper inside to investigate. Finally, Chairman Jong Hyun appeared on the grand stage. Grand Sorcerer Otomo stood up to preside over the ceremony, as he had been waiting for this moment. So Jin, emerging from her hiding place, began cursing Chairman Jong Hyun. Jong Hyun felt excruciating pain throughout his body. Otomo realized someone was disrupting the ceremony and hastily urged the other sorcerers to create a protective barrier. However, So Jin's power of hatred was too great. She suppressed the sorcerers, causing them to collapse and vomit blood one after another. Seeing this, this, Grand Sorcerer Otomo had to personally intervene. True to his reputation as the strongest sorcerer in Japan, Otomo alone was able to withstand Sojin's terrifying curse. At the very last moment, the dramatic events of the ceremony led the attendees to mistakenly believe it was a staged art performance, causing them to gasp in admiration. They had no idea what tragedy was about to unfold. They only saw thick red veins appearing on Chairman Jong-hyun's body. The evil spirit Inugami, residing within Jong-hyun, broke free, completely possessing his body and transforming him into a true demon. Those in the audience began to transform, eyes turning bloodshot and their minds losing their sanity. Reporter Jin Hee and team leader Sung Jun also began to suffer the same fate. On the streets, a group of people tagged by the curse also fell victim, their eyes turning blood red. So Jin, cursed and thwarted by the power of Otomo, fainted. In her delirium, she saw the image of her deceased mother. Because she was a cursed sorceress, her mother was hated intensely by everyone, but all she did was earn money to provide a better life for her daughter. So Jin felt that even though she was cursed, her mother would never abandon her. Memories flooded back to the day Chairman Jong-hyun appeared, taking So-jin's mother away forever. So-jin was consumed by hatred. In other words, that hatred was being manipulated by the demon within her. However, since meeting reporter Jin Hee, So-jin's wounded soul was gradually healed by genuine love. So-jin woke up from her coma. She saw reporter Jin Hee lying beside her, cursed and writhing in agony. So-jin decided to do something great to save everyone. She cursed her own soul, aiming to destroy the Inugami residing within her body. Because the demon within her and the demon within Chairman Jong-hyun's body were a single entity, only when both disappeared could it be completely destroyed. When So-jin fainted again, reporter Jin Hee and everyone else woke up, their eyes returning to normal. Grand Sorcerer Otomo, however, suffered a horrific reaction from the curse. Experiencing excruciating pain, his disciples rushed to help him out. Chairman Jong-hyun lost his protector and his original soul. His body suddenly burst into flames like a living torch. The audience below was once again utterly astonished, thinking it was a spectacular stage effect. Finally, the demon was destroyed, and everything came to a complete end. News of the incident at Forest quickly became a hot topic of discussion across the newspapers. Chairman Jong-hyun was announced dead in the fire, so Secretary Lee Hwan and the Forest Group were held fully responsible for the series of crimes. So Jin was taken to an orphanage in an unconscious state. A month later, reporter Jin Hee and her husband visited So-jin, but she still hadn't regained consciousness. Jin Hee sat by So-jin's bedside, holding her hand and silently thanking her for the extraordinary things So-jin had done. Thanks to So-jin's sacrifice, everyone was safe. Jin Hee's words seemed to touch So-jin's subconscious, causing a tear to fall from her eye. As soon as Jin Hee and her husband left the room, So-jin mysteriously disappeared from her hospital bed. Can anyone guess where So-jin went? Perhaps she chose to leave this noisy world to find peace for herself. The story concludes with So-jin's mysterious disappearance, leaving viewers with a lingering sense of unease. The Cursed is not simply a dramatic spiritual battle, it's also a profound warning about the weight of hatred. Hopefully, through this story, each of us will learn to nurture seeds of kindness instead of watering the plant of hatred. Thank you for accompanying me until the very end. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel so we can meet again on our next mysterious journeys. Goodbye, and see you again.